Hey there, mamas! So today I'm going to be doing the non-serged prefitted. It's a fitted diaper made out of just a prefold. The non-serged version is, you don't need a serger, it's just a sewing machine. It's similar to my tutorial from my blog for the detail-oriented, but I think a little simpler and cleaner looking as well. It's just evolved over the years. This is the easiest, laziest way of doing the detail-oriented pre-fitted. This is a prepped infant size Cotton Babies pre-fold. I'm also going to be doing one with an unprepped infant size, a different brand. I don't remember the other brand. For the prepped, I found that my best pattern that works is the Pocket All-in-One Extra Small. You can see it's pretty good. I have ironed this a little bit ahead of time. It was much more wrinkly. You really only need to iron the sides. Like, you don't need to even worry. Not even going to be touching the middle. So iron out your sides. For this version, it makes it a lot easier when it comes to clipping and sewing. The Pocket All-in-One Size Extra Small works really good on the prepped. You can see it lines just right up with it. The Square Tab Newborn to Small is the best one for the unprepped. But you can use any pattern that you like, and you don't have to use a pattern at all. The key for this model is that you just have to stay at least 3 centimeters outside of the inside seams through the leg area, which is like, what, like a little over an inch and a quarter. As long as you're like between 3 and 3.5 centimeters or an inch and a quarter, inch and a half, then you really have enough room. You can do a little bigger if you want more coverage. It doesn't matter as long as you have a little bit of a cut in. So you could freeform it. You could just go and draw that line and then, you know, do your in and then curve to your hip size. But if you want to use a pattern, I've got one traced already. I just used washable pen. And I just did rough lines so that the curves through the middle are the same, as you can see. And then I left the front squared. And it just ends up being a lot easier if you don't curve down like this does at the front. If you just go straight out, then it's less seams, it's less sewing. And don't we all like less sewing? I like less sewing. It'll fit the same. When you're putting it on, you just wrap the front around the baby's tummy and everything else is the same. This isn't the extended wing pre-fitted, this isn't the t-shirt pre-fitted, this is just using a pre-fold. So basically we're just gonna cut out these lines that I've drawn, or that you've drawn, and making sure they're outside of that line there. Now that it's cut like that, you're going to open it up 2 layers and 2 layers right through that little opening that you cut. This is the side that's folded. On the other side, you might have to trim off some interior fabric. Okay, and you keep these. These are going to become your added soaker. So now that we're inside here, I'm going to show you this. See all this extra fabric in here? There's the 2 outer layers, both above it and below it, but some pre-folds have a very large fold-over piece here, and some don't have hardly any. If there's a lot, you're going to want to go in with your scissors and carefully cut it out around that inner curve. You're just going to want to pull it back a little bit and just cut in, leaving only about 1/4 inch of it. That's scrap. You can't really do much with that. That's just kind of wasted material. But it's only that little bit off the middle. You can leave it up the sides. So now that you've got it cut out, both sides, you're going to take the layers and you're going to tuck them in at the top and the bottom. Like 1/4 inch or almost a centimeter. Like 2/3, a little over 1/2 centimeter. You're going to take the top and fold it in. Take the bottom and fold it in the same amount. And then you're going to push them together and you're going to put in your first clip or your first pin. And it takes a little bit of time to do this prep, but it really is worth it. It makes for a really nice result. So make sure they're even when you lay them on top of each other. And just do like 1 inch at a time, and you can either pin them or clip them. So you just continue that around on both sides. And I've got my unprepped one that I've got more here, and I've got it so that it's easier to see because the wrinkles will hide the stitches, and I want to really have you able to see what I'm doing. So it'll be the same process for both. I just wanted to show it with one that was, you know, smoother and easier to see. So let's set this one aside. It's the same process. So now you've got your all clipped prefold, cut and clipped. You've clipped it in so it's a little closer to the middle now. It could be folded in even more. This is giving a lot of extra space. I'm going to make large casings in this one since it's not pre-shrunk. The other one I could do it a little tighter. The back has the tag on it here. This is the front. You'll see the curve goes in more and more sharply at the front. It's not an even curve throughout. That's why using a template is helpful. I'm going to be sewing my casings, and the way that I'm going to sew my casings is you can use a washable marker and mark them, but usually I start my elastics below the front area. So the elastic top would probably be right around there. You could do it a little lower even. You could even do it as low as here, but I tend to do it like right kind of at that curve. Try to line. And this is washable marker, so it'll come right out. Let's do it to there. So there's your front of your casings, and my back, it's that same kind of point on the hip. So it's a little further back, right about there. You can look at your template. Your template will have a line. A general fitted or even, you know, even pocket diaper template will have an elastic casing line. The front for a fitted will be a little further forward than on a pocket diaper though. And you're just gonna sew down really close to that edge, but not all the way up, just like an inch beyond your elastic casing. You're gonna leave the rest clipped until we are done installing our elastics. And you just use a straight stitch and just kind of hug close to the outside edge. So there's both your sides sewn up on the outside. You can see how nice and flat that looks. And now you're just gonna do your casing inset from that. So I use 3/8 inch elastic. So what I'm gonna wanna do is make sure that I lay my elastic down and put, you know, a good amount of space beyond where that casing is gonna be. So if measuring helps and you wanna draw a line, that's great. You can kind of eyeball it. I tend to just kind of eyeball it. But for me, you know, that would mean that I want to go, you know, around 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters. Quite large for an unprepped prefold. If you're using a prepped prefold, you can make that a little bit narrower. But for me, since my fabric's going to shrink, but my elastic's not going to shrink, then I don't want to make it too tight. You don't want to make it close. And you don't want to have to pull too hard. Not for a fitted. For a pull diaper, you might want to make it more snug. And for this part, you're only going to sew at the casing lines that you've drawn from your pattern. So now you can see I've sewn my little casing channels on the sides. You want to make sure they're even. Mine don't look like they're quite even. You can always fold them against each other. But if you're using a template, then of course they're going to be even. But I didn't eyeball it perfectly. So I'm just gonna make sure that when I sew my elastic down, the channel on this side goes a little higher up. So now you've got your casing channels. Now you're gonna feed your elastic. This is just the way I always feed my elastic. But you can go from either end to either end because both sides are open on this. I like to use a bodkin, but you can use a safety pin. Line up your elastic end about 1/4 to 1/2 inch beyond your casing and you sew down one side. Just go back and forth a few times. I'm gonna do your stretching to your desired tightness. Nice, even stretch. You can pin it in place since it's a fitted. You don't need to worry about, pinning through a fitted, but for pull, you definitely don't want to pin in place. You want to just hold it. Okay, then at this point, you're gonna just cut off the end of your elastic there, leaving about 1/4 inch beyond. Just tuck it inside and make sure that your fold there is still nice and clean. And the way that I measure the second side is I just pull it till when it's relaxed, it's the same length as when it's relaxed on the other side. So I've got my new dot for my line that I drew here. And then I want to make sure that the ends line up evenly. So you've got your casings, and that's perfect. I don't have it bunched up evenly, but the relaxed elastic is the same length, so that's what you need. So now at this point, the last thing you have to do with this part is just to finish this seam up to the edge. And you just back and forth at the beginning and the end, sew it all the way through. At this point, you've got your nice shaped fitted through the middle. There's the inside, there's the outside. You can add your serger later. And the back elastic is optional. Not everybody does back elastic. You could just keep it like a fitted at this point, or keep it like a pre-fold at this point, and just fold it and snappy it on. It's completely functional like this. You do not have to do back elastic, but if you do, a really easy way to do it is just to kind of pop this one seam for the first 1/2 to 2/3 inches, first centimeter or so. It's just a couple threads. You could cut it too, but because you're going to be zigzagging it closed. But I found that this is just the simplest way, the least effort, to make a nice little back elastic. So there's one side, and then you're just going to sew your little elastic casing channel just across that middle there, just where that middle fold is. And it's a different width on different pre-folds. And this is going to be the same as we did on the serged. And there are other ways you can do this too, but this is just super easy. Now you take your elastic, you take your bodkin or your safety pin, and you're going to push it to the end and then cut a little escape hole. Just a little slit, right where it hits. It's easy to run it first because then you can really feel for what layer you're on. And you only want to cut through that the outer 2 layers. And just enough for the elastic to get pulled through. So now we're going to take it and we're going to go to like a mid-length zigzag, plain old normal zigzag stitch. Fairly tight, like 1.5 on mine. And we're just going to zigzag up and down and close off that end of that along with sewing down the elastic at the same time. And now once you've got it zigzagged down nice and tight, you just go in and snip off the edge there. And you can't even see it when you're done. And then you pull the other side just a little bit snug. And then you do the same thing, just zigzag up and down to close it off. And then you're just going to cut it right at the edge. And there's your gorgeous, even, pre-fitted, made with just a straight stitch on a sewing machine, except for at the very back where I zigzagged. Then at this point, you're going to take your little cut pieces that were cut from the sides here. They were the pieces that fit in right on those sides. We're going to take them, we're going to open them up. If you're using an already prepped shrunk prefold, I recommend ironing these down. Makes it a lot easier to keep them even. And we're going to put them face to face. Put the bigger one, if there's one that's bigger, because this was uneven, put the bigger one underneath. And if you want to do, you know, for a larger prefold and a larger prefitted, this will be more oval. Since this is a smaller prefold and it's shorter and wider, it's going to be, these are closer to round. But if you want to shape them, you want to make sure that it doesn't end up any wider than your little middle area here. So you want to kind of go in and either draw a rough line where it's going to be, or use a template for an insert. For me, I'm just going to do a rough line, and you can pin these together, or you can clip them together. And you're just going to be making these and deciding where your turning hole is going to be. For me, I think I'm going to put my turning hole on the side right here. It'll be easiest. And you're just going to sew around, leaving that turning hole open. And now you're just going to turn them through that turning hole. And you don't need to cut off anything. You can trim it, but you don't need to, because then you'll have more fabric. You'll have more absorbency if you don't cut it. You can top stitch it to make it even. So there you've got your little extra wet zone protection if you want. You could sew it down at the front if it's a boy. You could sew it at the back if it's a girl. You can use it as the lay-in, just as a little extra soaker. It's just a little bit of an extra piece of material there that you can utilize. So there's your little prefold soaker and your little sizable. So for really tiny newborns, you could fold it down, but this is going to be the smaller size once it's shrunk. And you just fold it around their waist at the front, and then fold it around their front from the back, and use your snappy or your pins. And that is your sewing machine only, no serger, pre-fitted diaper. Happy sewing!